Hi, this is Pat McCarthy from McCarthy Performance. Today I'm going to show you how to take valves out of a head that's been run the right way. What happens is if the valves have been floated pretty hard or just severe use, they'll put a ridge up on the valve with a square keeper lock. Okay, it's important that you don't just pull them through and tear up the guides, because that you will do. So you want to take a file, fairly smooth one. You want to lay it flat on the top of the valve, alongside of the valve, I should say, and just go over it. You'll feel the high spot. Turn it until you don't feel the high spot dragging on the file. You can usually feel it. If not, you'll see it. Then you want to wipe the valve down, and then you want to carefully try to take it and pull it out. If it will not come out, you'll wipe it down. Okay, it'll come out. But it came out a little ways and it stopped. Push it back in. Take your file. File it. Right there's a high spot. I can hear it and I can feel it going through the file. Don't use anything other than a file. You could probably use a stone, but don't use a drill with a whizzer wheel on it or anything stupid like that. Just use a file. Okay, it goes through and it's not pulling and dragging on the guide, so it's not going to tear up the guide and oversize it. Now these are a pair of pliers that I made. I believe that was a 5/8 bolt. I ground it down. I slotted the teeth, and I use this for a puller, and it works all right. But you know, if you don't have one of these, you can use a pair of pliers. But you want to go just below the seal. Just below the seal, and you just pull it off. Just like that. If you're careful, you can reuse them. These are hard, so they should not be that hard. I'm not going to reuse them. They're fairly cheap enough, but if they're in good shape. Of course, if you do pull them through and there's burrs on them, you're going to tear up the seals too. So there is a little nylon booty that they give you on some of this stuff. If you don't have one of them, it's kind of hard not to tear up the seal. But so these were hammered pretty good. My guess is that they could have had a little bit more valve spring on them. The application that this was in, the guy told me, previous application, I'd have never put it together with hydraulic lifters. It would have had solids in it, and I would have ran more spring pressure on it. But that was not my engine build. So, but the locks are all the locks. You can see where they've been hammered out a little bit. So I suspect it's because it was in the valve float a couple times. Okay, that one pulled through. A lot of times you want to give them a little rap with a hammer. Use a brass one if you can. You don't want to intentionally drop it down on its side, but if you hit it on an angle a little bit on the side of the retainer, it will unseat them sometimes. I had a devil of a time getting these loose. They were severely hammered. Now, a 7-degree lock, they do wedge, but these were a little bit more than normal. So that's why I believe it was in the valve float. Looks like my spring tool is going to give me some trouble today, but time for a rebuild. we'll get back to that. Anyways, these are knurled, or I should say they're grooved. So these, when you put them on this type of guide, they don't usually just come right off. They grab a hold of them. They're barbed. So we'll do one more. It looks like it lost maybe a push rod, or on a couple of them where the geometry was way off. The side of the valve is got some marks on it, although that top of that valve is usually chamfered and these are. So the hardened part of the top of the valve did not interfere, but you want to be aware of that when you pull them off, if you can't drag them out like that. That one don't look bad. We'll touch up the stems. We're using different rocker arms, so these heads were put together without valve shims in the pockets, spring pockets. I'm going to try to, I ordered a new set of springs with a different installed height. It's going to allow me to put a locator under here, and that's what I'm going to probably use, is a 60 thousandths inner locator. It's going to locate the inner part of the spring. I might use them, or I might just use a hardened VSI shim under there. I haven't decided yet. I don't have the springs in front of me. So we'll get these out, and I'll see if I can get my spring tool to cooperate with me today. I think it's time for a rebuild kit for it. This one wants to fight. Of course, you'll want to number the valves on this particular job. I don't believe at this point in time we're going to do a valve job on it. Didn't have very many miles on it. They don't appear to be hammered very bad. I'm going to look at them once I clean them and make that decision. But I have the valves all marked. You don't have to stamp a ball, number them. I just do the odd and even side, stamp the top of the head, and you know, this would be number 8, and then just go down the firing order, and that's how I do it. That one's stamped at number 7, down the firing order on that side, so I can put the valves back in the heads where they came from. Now I got my spring compressor to work. I made a couple gaskets for it, but I don't think they're going to last, so probably have to order a rebuild kit for it, but we'll take these two springs off. I think it'll do that. Barely. That one still has a little bit of a burr on it. But anyways, you get the idea. And, you know, this got a little nick in it here. And that's when you put the spring compressor and you cock the spring compressor and you hit the retainer. Sometimes it'll make a nick. And you always want to make sure when you see that, you want to hit it with a file. You don't want to hit the valve too far down where the seal is. Of course, you're only taking the high spots off the valve. We're not trying to regrind the valve's, you know, stem. So we're just getting the highs off of it. And I think that one feels pretty good. So anytime you pull down on the valve and you feel resistance, you know, anytime you pull down on the valve and you feel resistance, you know, that it stops. Stop. Don't force it through. Push it back up. Take a file. Turn the valve. Hit the valve with a file. Wipe the valve down. You know, make sure there's no filings left on the valve. And then pull it through. And if you can't pull it through, file on the high spots until you can put it through. Don't take a whiz wheel, 3M Scotch wheel, or a die grinder or anything like that unless you plan on throwing the valves away. Don't destroy the valve. Just go around it lightly with a file, and that's all you need to do. And if you want, you can take a piece of sandpaper after you're done You get done doing them all. This is probably a little bit more aggressive than need be. You take the valve, just this part of the valve right here, and you can see right there where I was talking about that notch. You want to make sure you take them out. And just take this valve and just turn it, polish that up a little bit. Just like that. Okay, just a little quick video on one of my pet peeves, I guess. The things that really irritate me the most is when somebody says, "Oh, don't take the valves out." "Oh, I can take the valves out. I got a spring compressor." Yeah, you might have a spring compressor, but if you don't take care of that, I'm going to be putting new valve guides in for your head. So you're not going to save yourself money taking out valves if you're doing it the wrong way. We're assembling the Pontiac cylinder heads. We're using a VSI shim, and they're purple in color. That means they're harder. They're the high performance ones. I prefer using these. You can get shims from other manufacturers. Some of them are not very good. Some of them are, you got to watch out for the super thin ones, the Chinese ones. They usually have burrs on them, and they're not hard as they could be, and the spring can curl right under it and tear it up. So you want to be careful. You always want to run a hard shim if you can, or if you need to go up, you know, you can run a locator or a hat possibly. Depends on the application. I always orientate the springs to the hardest material that I believe that there is. On these, I have the tails going towards inward. I don't want them here because I don't want to tear up the side of the guide, which is probably never going to happen, but it possibly could. So I'm putting them to the top of the retainer. So that's what we're going to do there. I noticed the retainers that he's got, okay, yeah, they do fit good. Yeah, okay, they were riding up on the inner. You got to always make sure that it's either a press fit. You don't want it excessively loose. And I don't know, I might look for a better retainer. That is a little bit looser than I care for. That's what was assembled on the heads. I have extra retainers. I can look. I've gone to a plus lock for installed height, more installed height, and the reason being is on these there's not a lot of spring pressure on them. If there's a lot, you want to try to keep away from the plus heights, because more of the wedge part below the lock is not being utilized on the valve. I've never had a problem with them. If you're going high spring pressure, you really shouldn't do that. But I'm not a fan of cutting into the spring pockets on these older heads, because you can cut through them. These have already been spot faced. I want to run at least a 30 or a 60, and the plus 50s will let me go that route. And that's kind of the way we're going to go. I'd rather have a hard shim under the spring than nothing at all, because the tails can cut into the iron of the heads, which will allow more garbage into the oil. Okay, I was taking apart a set of small block Chevrolet heads. We're up on the Pontiacs now, but I realized that half the video you couldn't see half of what I was doing. So I was talking about these pliers that I made up. You didn't see them a very good way that they function. They don't function the greatest, but they don't work too bad. If you've got to take a seal off, they work pretty good about taking them off and not destroying them. And if for some reason, like on this head for instance, I put the seals on. I was going to use a 303. I ended up deciding to use a 306 because I liked the way that fit better. So I took all the seals off, and I used these pliers. I'll show you on a set of aluminum heads I'll be doing. But anyways, these work pretty good. And all I did was take a cheap pair of pliers, and I took a, I believe it was 5/8 nut, grind it down, and then I cut slots in the teeth, removed the teeth, and then I just brazed it up. So these work okay. You can buy pullers, but you know, it was just an old pair of Craftsman pliers, and I just modified them. It works good. Some guys use a plastic tool remover for a plastic clip on cars, door trim pads. You can modify one of them if you want. Here's a plastic trim tool. When I used to be in the body business, that's what we used to use. You know, I've thinned it out a little bit. You can modify it, or you can cut this back a little bit better, and a lot of guys will take it and just wedge it in there and work it off. You know, when these things go up on these barb type fitting guides, I should say, not fittings, guides, they don't really come off easy, but these don't work too bad. And I'll show you on a set of aluminum heads. I've got a bunch of engines in the shop right now. I'm putting these together. I'm taking a set of Dart small blocks apart. I got a set of Fords I got to take apart, 460s on a 550 cubic inch plus big Ford. I'm refreshening one I built 12 years ago, and I got a couple of things in that I'm going back through jobs that I built over 5 years ago. The one small block I think was over 5. But anyways, I'll show you how them work better, and we'll get going on putting these together. I'm going to see if I can find a retainer that fits a little bit better. If my setup height's the same, we're all good. If not, I'll go back to the standard lock. So I'll go through my retainers and see what I have. So I stopped on the Pontiac heads. The retainers are looser than I want. I'll have to order some. So we put them off to the side, and the retainers are not what I want. I thought it was because the spring was down, but actually it's the second step, and I don't want them that loose. Okay, so we're on the small block Chevrolet heads. I've ordered the springs for it, going to a hydraulic roller. The springs that he had, they would have gone into coil bind. They had a little bit of pressure on them, but not the kind of pressure I'd like to see. He's going to run this fairly hard. So I'm going to use this single spring. It's still pretty much a stock wire diameter, or I should say a small block Chevrolet diameter. And because this is an aftermarket head, these things are cut out for max spring size. But if you're using a smaller spring, like an inch 250 and not an inch 450 or an inch 500, there's really no location. And I'm kind of a stickler on that. I like to have the springs located. I don't like them sliding around. So we're going to put a locator in the head, and that's going to hold the spring from moving around. So the retainer fits good. The assembled heights were good up to 540 lift, and the cam's only 500 and some change, so we should be fine. And when I mean change, I mean like 507 lift. So we'll be fine. For coil bind, I've checked it. I've checked the spring up to what they're advertising it at. Everything looks good. So we're getting to cleaning these heads up. I always run a gun tool in the valve guides. Put a little oil on it. You know, you want these things as clean as you can get them. It's basically a gun bore tool, cleaning tool, using wads on it. And they'll come out kind of dirty no matter how clean you think you got them. You put a little bit of oil on them, they'll come out a little bit dirty. So we'll probably run through a couple more times, have the seats all washed down with lacquer thinner, paper towel till it comes back clean, wipe down the valves even though they've been through the jet wash, and I'd be blasting them, but you know, they're the stuff you want as clean as you can get it. We didn't hot tank the heads, although if the hot tank was running, it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea. They're not excessively dirty, but there's still a little bit of carbon in them. Carbon's not really going to hurt too much. So we weren't planning on, well, the customer wasn't planning on doing a valve job on these heads, but after looking at them closely, there was a few that were hammered a little bit, and it needed a valve job. So I cut this one, the seats with stones on this one. So anyways, we're just about to the point where we're going to set up the heads, you know, put the springs on the heads, get them all set up to go. So that's clean enough on that. So we're going to start putting the valves in the head, seals, springs, locators, of course. Okay, now I just use regular heavyweight oil. This is probably 40 weight oil. I just oil up the guides really good. You can use assembly lube. I have some, but just plain old oil works fine. I've never had a problem with it. Of course, the valves are numbered. Not that it matters because they've all been ground, but we'll put them back in the same place they were. Work the valve back and forth a little bit, make sure it's got plenty of oil on the guide. Okay, put the locators down on the spring pockets, and we're going to check assembled height. Checked a couple of them already, but of course we're going to go through and check them all, adjust them if we have to. Okay, we've set up a couple. We're going to check each one as we go down the line. And yeah, I have one of these. I don't particularly care for this tool. I might be the only guy in the whole world that doesn't like them. I don't like it. I know that the snap gauge, there can be a little bit of indifference with that, but I prefer that. I'm more comfortable using it. I'm not the only guy that does it. I've seen a couple guys do it, but this is the way I've always done it. So you know, this is a hydraulic roller cam engine, and I've got my setup figured for inch 720. We're coming in roughly around there. So far, so good. We're inch 23 on that one. That's fine. I don't want to be below inch 720 if I can help it. Prefer inch 730, inch 1 inch 720 around there. That's fine. I just want to put a little oil on them. I'm just going down and I'm putting them on first before I put the seals on, because once I put the seals on, I can't get the locators off if I have to shim. You always want to shim underneath the locator. Don't ever put a shim on top of the locator. The locator should be harder than most shims you're going to find. So that's how you do that job. That's how I do it. You want to do it the other way, that's kind of a half-assed way to do it because the spring can cut through the shim, especially if it's a thin shim. If you're only shimming, 15 thousandths, I wouldn't trust one of them. I'd rather put it underneath it, but that's just me. Now this one's coming in exactly the same as the first one here. That's my exhaust. So it's within a thousandth of an inch according to that. We're running machined locks on this. You just want to make sure your locks are completely pulled up because that's a square groove. We'll check it again. We gained a little bit. This is a steel retainers and steel machined blocks, so it's going to have some pretty decent valve train stuff in it. I'm not really big on steel stamped keepers, locks. This is kind of where the break-off is, where I would rather not use them. You start getting up to over 300 open and 145 on the seat. It's really not, it doesn't cost that much to upgrade, So I like to go a little bit overkill on my valve train components. So this is pretty much how this whole job goes. You want to make sure your locks are all the way up to the top of the groove, because you can see there's quite a bit of movement in that valve lock keeper, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that one's up a little bit higher. The last one was just a hair bit less. This one says it's 3 thousandths more, which I would believe that. So we're inch 730, which is fine. I'm not going to shim. Usually you shim down, most cases. The spring pressure will be more than adequate, so there's no reason for me to shim down on these. They'll be fine. There's not going to be that much variance in them anyways. 10 thousandths really ain't a whole lot to get excited about. You start getting past that, then you'll have to make a determination. That one says 635. I'm not going to shim it. There's reasons to shim down, and there's reasons to not, and leave it right higher. Like I said, where the spring's going to be, we've got enough spring pressure. We're not up to coil bind yet, but in an all-out race motor, you want to run as close to coil bind as you can. I'm leaving a little fudge factor in the coil bind for variation in springs. These aren't, $500 valve springs, so I'm leaving a little bit of fudge factor in here because I don't know how close every single spring is, but I'd rather err on the tall side than run it too tight. If that makes any sense. Okay, this one says roughly 8 thousandths less. And close, and of course you're going to have maybe a little bit of variance with valves and whatnot. Okay, this is 726, which is fine. I can't do much with that one, and it's still 6 thousandths more than my minimum on setup. And I'm sure when these things get run, I will gain a little bit from everything seating in, because this is a 7-degree. The valve seats do, or the valve, the valve locks, the retainers, when they seat with a 7, they're gonna move a little bit with a 7-degree retainer with a 7-degree lock. Now Super 7s, they don't move much, and neither do 10 degrees. So we'll put this one on here. Check it. Okay, this one's a little bit looser. This is an exhaust. Exhaust and intake lift are the same on this cam. The 2,000ths difference. It's 730, so I'm within my target range that I want to see on this head. So we're going to put this head together. Of course, the other head will be pretty much the same. Because, excuse me, because this is a single spring, we don't have to worry about the seals getting hammered by the inner. There's plenty of room in there. You always want to make sure that, when you get into a triple or a dual spring, you always want to make sure that there's room in here. And that's another reason why I like to locate the bottom of the spring, is because, if you're running a triple or a dual, you got to be careful. You can shed this off. The spring will cut into it. But, so that's kind of why I like the spring to be located. I've seen under extreme use springs actually bend. That's an extreme use situation, but I have seen that happen. It doesn't take much effort to make to locate the spring. So that's what we did. We located the spring. The spring fits really nice in here. I mean, it can't move. And then, of course, at the top with the retainer, it's not going anywhere. Like I said, some people might think that's overkill. That's fine. Think what you want. It's my shop. It's got my name on it. That's the way we're doing it here. You don't like it, don't do it my way. So we're using the little booty, and it saves from getting the seal cut going across the valve notch. And of course, I'm taking the springs off the seals so they don't get damaged. I'm putting a little oil on them. Make sure we knock this one off. Start talking. I can't. I get distracted easily nowadays. So we got that one off to the side, so we're good. It's easier to take them off before they're on, obviously, so you want to try to do that. So I'll put these on, put the springs on them, and I'll get back to you. Okay, we're going to put the seals down. There's tools to put the seal down. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can just simply press them down like that. This is a 1/2-inch socket. That's a 6-point. So 12-point will probably go right across it. So if you put something on your palm, you can usually push them down. I've got a little tool here that works pretty good. I've made them up in the past, and My snap-on hammer's missing the end of it. Snap-on guy don't come around here anymore. I guess he don't like it because I don't buy much of his stuff anymore, but that one's down all the way. That one's down all the way. You gotta be careful with these. On some guides, if you hit them too hard, you can drive the rubber center right out of them. So when they stop, stop. You know, don't hit them any harder. Okay, we're going to check from retainer bottom to seal lip. That one ain't all the way down. Sometimes the rubber gets bunched up underneath them because them are barbed. They don't really like to go down all the way sometimes. Sometimes you got to get a little bit ignorant with them, but try not to get too crazy because you can knock the centers out of them. And I know because I've done it. Okay, so we'll check this one because it is fully seated. Looks like we got about probably 600 and something there. So we got plenty. Safety margin 60 to 80 thousandths, whatever you feel comfortable with. So we're actually almost 700, so we're fine on that one. And if you go through and you check each one like I do, even if you've got a seal that's not quite all the way down and it doesn't really want to go down, but it ain't going to, you know, easily go down any further, then as long as you've got 580 on this particular situation, 560, you'll be fine. Yeah, we're minus 16 thousandths on that. We're still well within the range of the camshaft. We don't have to worry about any of that. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to check each one like I do all the time, and we'll start putting springs on because we're in the setup range that we need to be. Of course, you always want to remember to put your tension springs back on your seals. Oh, this one's various of 3. We're still 680. We're plenty good enough. So I'll start putting the springs on, and I'll get back to you when I get going on that. So we're about 310 open, which is fine for that spring. It's showing that it's about, I cranked a couple of these down for coil bind and they settled in. They varied a little bit. Usually if they vary 5 pounds, I usually take the heavier reading ones and put them on the exhaust side and the lighter ones on the intake side. Usually the exhaust side breaks down a little quicker because of the heat. But they're all relatively the same. This one is just a little bit lighter. I'll probably put that on the intake side. But I don't know if I said the seat is about 138, which is for the hydraulic roller lifters I use. That doesn't seem to be a problem with them. Of course, with other rocker or with other hydraulic roller lifters, I'm not going to get into it. There's a couple of them that I don't use no more, and I won't mention the names, but the ones that I use now, they don't have a problem with that kind of spring pressure. But you should follow the recommendation of the hydraulic roller lifter. And I don't want to get into all that because Everybody's got their own theory on that. So we're going to put the springs in. We're going to start doing that now. My spring compressor's still leaking. I replaced one of the gaskets in it and made one, and it leaks still a little bit, so it's kind of tricky, but it's working until I order a rebuild kit for it. So that's kind of pretty much how that goes, and we'll get the rest of them on here. There's going to be no surprise with these. Everything's pretty much set to go, so I don't think you want to watch me doing the rest of them.